the moment Emily Carter stepped back into her childhood home. She felt it, the strange pull she couldn't explain and didn't want to name. It wasn't the house, with its quiet walls and familiar creaks. It wasn't the rain falling outside, soft and steady like it always did in Oregon. It was the feeling that something in her life was about to shift. And she was already too close to stop it. She had told herself this was just a visit. 3 days, that was all. A short break from Seattle, from work stress, from the small apartment. That felt emptier each year. She was 32 now, old enough to know better, old enough to control her thoughts. At least, that's what she believed when she booked the flight. But the moment she saw Daniel Brooks standing in the doorway, holding it open with an easy smile, her confidence slipped. "Emily," he said warmly, "you made it." Daniel was her mother's new husband, married just over a year, calm, steady, and impossible to dislike. He wasn't handsome in a loud way. He had kind eyes, light brown hair touched with gray, and the sort of calm that made people trust him without trying. He stepped aside so she could enter, giving her space the way he always did. "Hi, Daniel," Emily replied, forcing a smile. Her mother's voice floated from the kitchen, cheerful and excited. "Emily, you're here already." Emily hugged her mother tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender. Her mom looked happier than she had in years. That fact alone filled Emily with relief and guilt she didn't understand yet. Dinner passed easily. Small talk, laughter, stories about work and neighbors. Daniel listened more than he spoke, nodding, smiling at the right moments. Emily noticed everything about him, and that bothered her. She told herself it was nothing, just observation. Nerves. Later that night, Emily lay awake in her old bedroom, staring at the ceiling she used to count stars on as a child. She felt restless, out of place, like a guest in her own past. The next morning, her mother left early to run errands. Emily hadn't expected that. She stood in the kitchen, mug in hand, unsure what to do with herself. Daniel was there too, quietly, sorting mail at the counter. The silence stretched, but it didn't feel empty. It felt heavy. "Coffee?" Daniel asked. "Sure," Emily said, though she barely tasted it. They sat across from each other at the small wooden table. It's the same table where Emily once did homework, where her parents once argued, where her mother now laughed again. The house held too many memories, and Emily felt them all at once. "You seem tired," Daniel said gently. Emily laughed, short and dry. "Yeah, life does that." Daniel nodded. "It really does." Something about the way he said it, like he understood, without asking questions, hit her harder than it should have. Emily looked away, focusing on the rain sliding down the window. She stood up quickly. "I think I'll go for a walk." Daniel looked surprised. "In the rain? I don't mind," she said. And she didn't. The cold air felt better than the warmth inside. She walked fast, letting the rain soak her jacket, her thoughts spinning. She didn't want to think about why that simple conversation had shaken her. She didn't want to admit she felt seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. That night at dinner, Emily barely spoke. Her mother noticed. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked. "Just tired," Emily said. Daniel didn't look at her. The next day moved faster. They cleaned the garage together, the three of them, laughed about old boxes and forgotten things. Emily found a photo of herself as a teenager, awkward and hopeful. Her mother smiled at it. Daniel did too. "She looks strong," he said. Emily's throat tightened. That evening, her mother got a phone call from a friend and stepped outside to talk. Emily and Daniel were left in the living room, the TV on but muted. "This was your room?" Daniel asked, nodding toward the hallway. "Yeah," Emily said. "Feels smaller now." "It's funny how that happens," he replied. There was a pause. Emily felt it again, that pull. It's the dangerous closeness of shared space and unspoken thoughts. "You don't have to stay the whole weekend," Daniel said suddenly. "If it's hard?" Emily looked at him. "Hard? How?" He hesitated. "Being back here, Sometimes old places bring back things we don't expect. Emily swallowed. You're very perceptive. He smiled faintly. Ha, I try not to be. That was the moment Emily realized something was wrong, not with him, but with herself. She felt an emotional spark, a sense of connection that went beyond what was safe. It scared her because it wasn't loud or obvious. It was quiet, slow, easy to hide. That night, she dreamed of conversations that never happened and feelings she didn't want to feel. On Sunday afternoon, the house grew quiet again. Her mother went to lie down with a headache. Emily sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone without seeing anything. Daniel was in the kitchen, washing dishes. She heard the water stop. Emily, he called. Yeah, could you hand me the towel? She walked into the kitchen and passed it to him. Their hands brushed for half a second. That was all. But Emily froze. Daniel pulled his hand back immediately. Sorry, it's fine, she said too quickly. But it wasn't fine. Her heart was racing. She stepped back, feeling overwhelmed. I think I need to go, she said. Now, Daniel asked, confused. Yes, I should. He studied her face, concern clear in his eyes. Did I do something? Emily shook her head. No, you didn't. That's the problem. She grabbed her bag and left before he could respond, tears blurring her vision as she drove away. She didn't stop until she reached a rest area miles away. She sat in her car, breathing hard, ashamed of feelings she never wanted. Back in Seattle. Emily tried to bury it. Work, friends, noise. But silence always brought the truth back. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Her mother called often. Emily answered. Less. Finally, she returned for her mother's birthday. She told herself she was stronger now, more in control. Daniel greeted her politely, but something had changed. He kept his distance. It was kind, but careful. The warmth was still there, but guarded. That hurt more than she expected. At the party, guests filled the house. Laughter echoed. Emily watched Daniel from across the room, helping her mother, smiling for everyone else. He never once looked at Emily longer than necessary later that night. After the guests left and her mother went to bed, Emily found Daniel on the back porch. The air was cold, quiet. I owe you an apology, Emily said. He didn't turn around. So do I. That stopped. I should have set clearer boundaries sooner, Daniel continued. This family matters too much. The word family settled between them. Heavy and final. Emily felt tears rise. I would never hurt my mom. I know, he said softly. That's why this ends here. They stood in silence. The truth, finally. Clear, no drama, no secrets spoken aloud. Just understanding. Emily left the next morning. Knowing part 1 of the story wasn't about losing control, it was about realizing how close she came and choosing to step back before everything broke. The moment Emily Carter stepped off the plane in Portland, she felt a mix of relief and dread. Coming back for her mother's birthday should have been simple, a happy occasion. But she couldn't shake the memory of that rainy weekend months, a Gotha quiet kitchen, the accidental closeness, the way her heart had betrayed her. Every mile closer to her childhood home made her chest tighten. She told herself she was stronger now, older, wiser. She would control her emotions this time. She had to. The house looked the same. The porch swing creaked in the breeze. Daniel Brooks was there, as always, tending to the garden, his posture calm, methodical. He turned when he heard her footsteps, offering a polite smile. Emily's heart caught in her throat, a rush of emotion she hadn't expected. Daniel hadn't changed. His kindness, his steadiness, the way he always seemed to understand everyone's moods. He was exactly the same man who had shaken her control months ago. Emily, he said, stepping forward. Welcome back. She forced a smile, nodding. Thanks, Daniel. Happy birthday to Mom. Her mother appeared behind him, radiant as ever, and the room filled with warm hugs and laughter. Guests started arriving, friends and family filling the house with noise and celebration. Emily tried to immerse herself in the crowd, to ignore the subtle tension she felt whenever Daniel glanced her way. At first, everything went smoothly. Emily chatted with relatives, laughed at old stories, and helped her mother serve cake. But as the evening progressed, moments alone with Daniel became unavoidable. He handed her drinks, passed her plates, smiled briefly when no one else was watching. Emily felt that pull again, the quiet attention, the unspoken understanding. It made her chest ache. She hated herself for feeling it, hated the way her body and mind responded despite knowing it was wrong. Later, after the guests left and her mother went to bed early, Emily found herself on the back porch. The house was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the city in the distance. Daniel stepped outside behind her, closing the door softly. Quiet. "Night," he said. Emily nodded, her fingers twisting nervously. "Yeah, peaceful." He looked at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Emily, I want you to know, I noticed back then, when you were here last time, I saw that tension in your eyes." She froze. The words she had buried came rushing back. The fear, the shame, the longing, all of it pressed against her chest. I was confused," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly, keeping his distance. "I know. I think we both realized things that shouldn't have happened." Emily's breath caught. She remembered that rainy kitchen, the brief brush of hands, the conversation that never should have sparked feelings she didn't want. "I never meant to feel that way," she said, the words trembling in her voice. "You didn't," Daniel said gently. "It's human. Feelings can be complicated. What matters is how we act on them." The clarity hit her harder than any. Guilt Cootie was right. Nothing had happened. No line had truly been crossed. But the emotions, the near miss of losing control, had left a mark she couldn't ignore. I hate that I felt like that," she admitted, "especially knowing you're here for Mom. I could never do anything to hurt her." Daniel's eyes softened. "And you won't. That's why I've kept my distance. And why I hope you can do the same." They stood in silence, the night cool around them, letting the truth settle between them. Emily realized that losing control wasn't about desire. It was about vulnerability, about loneliness, about longing for a connection she hadn't found elsewhere, and recognizing it had been the hardest part. Over the next day, Emily threw herself into the celebration, helping her mother, laughing with family, and keeping a careful distance from Daniel. Every glance reminded her of the boundaries they both had to maintain. Every small interaction tested her self-control. She had never expected a birthday visit to feel like navigating a minefield of emotion. But she managed. At one point, she found herself alone in the living room, staring at a photograph of her younger self on the wall. Daniel stepped in quietly. Pausing beside her, "She's beautiful," he said, nodding at the photo. "Strong, just like you." Emily felt the familiar tug in her chest, but forced a steady breath. "Thank you," she said softly. "I mean it," Daniel continued. "You have a kind of strength that's rare. That's why this family, this home, means so much." The words were a bomb and a challenge all at once. Emily wanted to retreat, to hide from the truth that Daniel's perception of her could stir emotions she didn't want. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. As the evening wound down, her mother finally called Emily upstairs. She pulled her into a hug. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispered. "It's been too long." Emily smiled, tears pricking her eyes. She whispered back, "I'm glad too, Mom. Really." Later, Daniel approached, a soft but firm presence. "Emily, I know this isn't easy, but we have to remember why we're here. Family comes first." "I know," she said, the words heavy with relief. "I understand." For the first time in months, Emily felt a measure of peace. Not because the feelings had disappeared, but because she had chosen control over chaos. She had acknowledged, The pool faced the emotional storm and decided to step back. That night, she lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, letting the events replay in her mind. She had survived the weekend without crossing any boundaries. She had confronted her emotions honestly and respectfully. And though the heartache of longing lingered, it was tempered with wisdom and clarity. Emily realized something important. Emotional temptation doesn't always come with action. Sometimes the true test of maturity and strength is recognizing feelings, understanding them, and choosing the right path anyway. She had almost lost control, but she hadn't. That was the victory. The next morning, she packed her bag quietly, hugged her mother tightly, and gave Daniel a brief, composed nod. "Thank you for understanding," she said. He smiled, warm but distant, a mirror of her own resolve. "Always," he replied. As the car pulled away, Emily watched the house fade into the distance. She carried with her a mix of relief, guilt, and clarity, knowing she had faced the most complicated emotions of her life and walked away with dignity intact. It was a lesson in restraint, a story she would remember forever. And the quiet realization that love and respect often meant resisting the things that seemed easiest in the moment. Months later, Emily would look back at that weekend, not with shame, but with quiet pride. Losing control hadn't happened, and in that restraint, she found a deeper understanding of herself, of desire, and of the fragile yet powerful bonds that hold families together. She understood now that sometimes the strongest stories aren't about giving in, they're about knowing where to draw the line, standing firm and carrying the weight of emotions without letting them dictate her actions. That realization stayed with her long after she returned to Seattle. A steady reminder that emotional strength could be as profound as any physical act. And that integrity sometimes means choosing the hard path, even when every heartbeat seems to urge you otherwise. By the time Emily reached her apartment, the sun had risen, warm and bright. She opened the door and let herself breathe. She had survived, she had learned, and she had grown. And though Daniel Brooks remained a complicated memory, he also represented something vital, a lesson in boundaries, respect, and the quiet power of choosing the right path, no matter how tempting the other felt. Her story didn't need scandal, drama, or chaos to be remembered. Its strength lay in the restraint, in the honesty, and in the emotional journey she had survived. Emily understood now. True intimacy isn't about crossing lines. It's about understanding them and having the courage to never step over. The weekend had ended, but the lessons would stay with her forever.